here with Coach Poeta. First time we're doing this, right? So everyone wanted us to get Coach on the podcast. It's exactly what we did, but it wasn't enough. It wasn't enough. I was hit up by parents. I seen people at this weekend at the high school like, we need more Coach Poeta. And that's exactly what we did. Coach, but I'm not going to do this without a proper introduction each and every week. Okay? So this is how we're going to roll it the first time, and it's going to change each and every week. From Bubba Jenkins, the fastest feet in the NCAA, the Italian Stallion, the Highland Park Kid, Coach Michael Poeta. We got him.
You said you're going to do that every time? You think I'm going to come back and do that every time?
Yeah. It is. Every time.
Appreciate it.
Yeah, different one. Greg, let's roll the clips from last weekend's duels and all the winners.
A nice takedown there for Cardani.
Gangnam Style. Gangnam Style. Hey, sexy lady. Gangnam Style.
He scores the first takedown of the match.
Sexy lady.
Danny with an inside trip.
Being 놈, 그 위에 나는 놈. Baby, 나는 뭘 좀 아는 놈.
There is the takedown from
Baby, 나는 뭘 좀 아는 놈. You know what I'm saying? 오빤 강남 스타일. Hey, sexy lady. 오빤 강남 스타일.
There it is.
Hey, sexy lady.
He picks up the takedown here. Picks up the takedown. Picks up the first takedown of the match.
오빤 강남 스타일.
Picks up another takedown.
All the building blocks from this weekend. You know, it's a building season for the University of Illinois. But let's start off with Justin Cardani. It was senior night. It was so important at the State Farm Center. Justin's been a staple for your program over the last 5 years. You know, what has Justin meant being a local kid to your program, and how important was it to see him get that victory over Brandon Morvari on Friday night against Minnesota?
Justin's a special kid. His character, his work ethic, he has it all. He's done and put in a lot for this program. He's a couple-time national qualifier, and seeing him get a win on senior night, seeing some raw emotion from him, a little flex, pointing to the crowd, and for him to experience that moment, I was really happy for him to go out like that. And so it was great for him individually, and then he kind of set up some nice momentum for us going into 33-41 on top of it.
Yeah, and then, you know, rolling into Tony Magical. I mean, Tony's been on a roll. 4 straight victories now, you know, and then he beats 18 Tyler Wells on Friday night, and then he rolls into Sunday, you know, against a freshman, Nicola Rivera, highly ranked kid. And Tony's been on a roll. And not just his top work, but he had a really nice match on Sunday on his feet against Rivera as well.
Yeah, Tony, it might have been a little hidden. A lot of people probably don't know, but he was dealing with some injuries the first half of the year. And it seemed like we couldn't get him training like consistently enough, where we'd finally start to get to where he's wrestling a good amount of live, his timing's good, his shape's good, and then it seemed like the injury came back. And we would rehab it, and right as he was on the cusp of kind of being able to break through and really show who he is, it seemed like the injury hit again. And that's why some of the early duels he sat out, Midlands he sat out. So that's the reason behind that. But it seems like the last month his training has been pretty consistent with the rest of the team, where we didn't have to tailor it towards him, where he wasn't able to go as much live. So his training has been exactly how we've wanted it to be. He's been wrestling a good amount of live. He's been spending a lot of time with Zane Richards, with Jesse Delgado, and he's hit his stride. And when he picked up against Nebraska, the 2 wins he had over the weekend, especially the Minnesota one, those were great, solid, convincing wins He's doing a great job.
Yeah, I
And
mean
this is
that's
the
Tony
right
Madrigal
thing.
that you thought you were getting when he came over from Oklahoma as a grad student, right? And he looks the part.
Absolutely. I knew how good Tony was. Tony is insanely slick. He's got one of the best feels for wrestling I've ever seen. Like if you walk in our room and you're just looking around and you're watching the guys drilling, Tony Madrigal, you're gonna stop and watch him just because he's smooth. He really understands wrestling. He knows where to be. So yeah, I knew what we were getting. I mean, it's a guy that Lucas Bird is like a son to me. But Tony beat Lucas in college. He beat him at the Michigan State Open. So obviously that shows the level of where Tony's at, because in my mind, Lucas Bird there we go. Yeah, Bird is the word on that shirt. In my opinion, Bird is a guy that is going to be fighting for a national title and one of the front runners in the future seasons. He's actually been having incredible training on his way back from the injury he had with Bird. But with Tony, we knew how talented he was. He came here. We saw the talent often, but I think it was the consistency of training. I mean, it is really hard to get your timing right and to get into wrestling shape without being able to wrestle, especially without being able to wrestle live. So now we're doing that right. He's able to put the time in that he needs. He's got phenomenal partners, and I think Tony is really hitting stride right now at the right time.
That gets us to 141. Danny Pacino. He had a great showing against Minnesota, against Vance Von Bauer, a ranked kid, the inside trip. He just wore that poor kid out. And then he goes on and gets a second win over to where was that?
Wisconsin?
Wisconsin, yeah.
Pacino's skills and the wrestler that is in there, I know how good that can be. And he's had a season with some highs, some lows, and after Nebraska, even though we'll talk about it, but I felt like as a team, we were really starting to compete a lot harder. Danny didn't have the best match there. So even though overall the team was really, I felt, on a rise of the way we were competing and our effort, Danny probably personally felt left out of that himself because he wasn't happy with the way he performed against Nebraska. But then we roll into Minnesota and Von Bauer. You said, Greg, that Pacino wore him out. I mean, I think Von Bauer is probably one of the hardest guys to wrestle at that weight class. And I'm including a lot of guys that are ranked a lot higher than him, because Von Bauer has a pace on him that is as elite and high of a pace as you could have. And he does it for the entire duration of the match. I think Danny didn't wear him out. I think Danny out-toughed him at the end because Von Bauer never stopped coming at him. He was hand fighting hard. He was pushing forward. Everything Von Bauer does is hard, and he's in your face. And sometimes just that smothering pace can really get to someone. Like he's a very intimidating guy to wrestle. His style of wrestling, and Pacino got tough, and that inside trip was beautiful. In the moment, I really thought we had back points. What we challenged in that moment, and looking back on it, probably wasn't. It's hard to admit that, but we were wrong. The rest got it right. We were wrong. Probably wasn't back points. It was really close. They probably had to just stick with whatever call they went with on the mat. And then Von Bauer gets away. So now it's 5-5. So you get that big takedown to have the lead. And then the Minnesota kid was out in a second. So now you're back to somewhat a square one. If I need to get a takedown again to win this match. And Danny got it in the next 10 seconds, the closing seconds of the match. And it was great to see that he got tough. That's what it was. He got really tough, and he flexed. He showed a lot of the same emotion that Cardani showed after the win, because I think he was flexing of like, all right, I'm back. I got a little bit of my mojo back, and that was exciting to see.
What I thought was he kind of jumped a level there, because he took on usually he's had trouble with the big, strong, tall kids. Not this time. He jumped a level in my eyes, at least.
I think we could say, he manned up. He manned up in that moment. In wrestling matches, to beat the best guys, they are going to be really, really hard, and you're going to have to do some things that you don't want to do in some moments where you are about as tired as you feel you've ever been. And Danny, the pace of that match for 6.5 minutes, for him to have two great attacks like that at the end, was just manning up.
Yeah. Well, what Greg calls it, Mike, is Pacino'd. He Pacino'd, right?
And that's the thing. Danny usually comes on stronger as the match goes on. So one of the critical things we've been working on is we got to make sure early on that he goes into the match is completely ready. Because some matches he's given up too big of a leads that they're just insurmountable. Now Midlands, he was down 8-0 in the first period of the match, and he won that match. But we don't want to keep being there. We never want to be there, and he's there a little too often. And so him having the win he had was beautiful. It's as far as like Von Bauer's a guy that you're not necessarily going to break when you say the normal standard got Pacino'd.
Yeah,
the normal standard one is normally the guy breaking and too tired. I think Danny just outgutted, out-toughed, outmanned in this situation because they were both hurting the same.
Mm-hmm.
Well, rolling into 157, Joe Roberts had a victory against Wisconsin and sudden victory against Luke Meckler. Joe gets back on track, which was nice to see because, we talked about it. It's been a roller coaster for Joe. He was a world beater at the beginning of the season, and that's a Joe we need to get back rolling into the Big Ten tournament. And hopefully this match turns a tide for him against Meckler.
For sure. We know how mental this sport is. What I reminded Joe since from Friday night all the way until his match, I reminded him as much as possible of the first day Austin O'Connor came into the office for one of our coaches meetings. He walked in and he said, I wrestled with Joe Roberts this morning. God, he could place this year. So that's the Joe that's what's in there. That's the Joe Roberts that we see guys, the coaches, other guys feel. And with Joe, I think it boils down to how much is he going to believe in himself going into the matches. So I basically ran a marathon in his head of just repeating what Austin O'Connor said, what Austin O'Connor said. And it's not as good as Isaiah Martinez still is, Jesse Delgado still is. They didn't wrestle the guys that are in college right now. And Austin has wrestled Levi Haynes. He's wrestled Peyton Robb. He's wrestled Will Luan. He's wrestled the same exact guys that Joe's wrestling and that Joe's going to have to beat an All-American. And so you're coming off a guy that's fresh off a national title 4 months prior and gets a hold of Joe Roberts and goes, holy, this kid is freaking right there. And so that's the best guy. That's the judge of it that you want. Is the guy that just won the national title at your weight 4 or 5 months prior, who's felt all the other guys. And he said, man, Joe's right there. So it was me reminding Joe about 1,000 times from Friday night to Sunday of what Austin said. And he picked up a huge win. And we knew that the duel was going to come down to every single point. And he gave us a chance to win it.
That's great. Greg, you want to roll into 174?
Yeah. Edmund Ruth. He's got Max Mailer. He's got Andrew Sparks. Adds those to the head count. He's on a roll. He's as strong and as quick and as durable during the match as Danny Pacino. It's like they have extra gas tanks. What do you think about Edmund Ruth, Coach?
Well, Edmund has, I think, two major things for him is it's definitely a skill to get the job done. Edmund knows how to get the job done. And then now also when he commits to his attacks, how high level he's made them and how he's made it so when he puts on a burst, when he puts on a sprint, there's nearly nobody in the world that could stop it. When I was talking to him the other day, I was like, Edmund, when you put 2, 3, 4 things together, it reminds me of someone being like swarmed by bees. Like there's so much going on in so many different directions. You literally just cannot handle an Edmund Ruth sprint. And I was really happy on Sunday against Mailer that he got going sooner. Against Sparks, he got some really nice takedowns with maybe a minute to go in the third. When it started, and Mailer, he started a lot sooner and started really picking himself up sooner. And it's like once Edmund gets that first big burst out of himself, he tends to get some momentum and start going a lot more. And so the main focus has been let's get that big burst early because then you seem to just naturally just get on a roll after that. And he did that with Mailer. I was happy to see that.
Yeah, and
he got taken down. He got taken down late with Mailer, trying to get bonus points. I think he had a 5-point lead, and he was being actively aggressive, really trying to get one. And Mailer was able to sneak one in. So I think the score of that match might have looked a little bit tighter than it was.
I mean, Edmonds 16-2 on the season. One of his losses is to O'Toole, who bumped up. So Edmonds right there with the best in the country, and I believe the number 8th ranking. And Mike, you and I touched on this a while back. Edmund is not the number 8 kid in the country. He's much better than that. He's much higher than that. But some reason he doesn't get any love.
No, there's one particular publication website that does rankings that I have started to be convinced that in my past I did something wrong to that person. One of my other coaches did something wrong to that person. Because it's not that I'm whining, it's just it doesn't line up with a lot of the other rankers a lot of times. And this is probably like the most public one that I'm talking about. And it kind of doesn't make sense. So I'm always going, man, there's got to be, are other coaches paying these rankings? How is Edmund behind some of these guys at times? Now, this was pre his loss to Kennedy, when they had him down at like 6 or 7 even before that match, which it just didn't make sense. But the thing is, who cares about rankings? We know he's significantly better than 8th. And I'll tell you what, I would rather be ranked 8th than 1st, knowing that I could be the champion, because that would piss me off. I'd take that personal, and it would motivate me to do even better and prove people. I like proving people wrong. And so I think Edmund has that same attitude. He'd probably rather be 18th. Or 8th. I think he's even brought it up, saying, I wish they ranked me even lower than that, because he loves proving people wrong.
We're gonna launch a public investigation. We're gonna find out what's going on.
I'll tell you what. I know. We're like kind of have. I said that kind of jokingly. Yeah. I'm actually being serious on that one. It's gone on for so many years. I'm going, man, and rankings don't matter, so it's not like the biggest deal. But I'm going, something's weird here. Something's off.
Well, lastly, Coach, from the weekend on the building blocks, you get Isaiah Pettigrew back at 197. He came back on Friday and was just getting his legs back. But, man, Isaiah Pettigrew looked explosive on Sunday against Wisconsin. And that was the Isaiah Pettigrew we seen early on in the season. What a burst to get him back into your lineup.
Yeah, Friday night, Joel's is tough. Isaiah, he's coming off knee surgery. That's why he was out. But I don't know if he wasn't mentally ready for Friday night against Joel's. He almost got the first takedown right away. But it's when you're out there in a match, that's like a whole different ball game than the training part. And you kind of need those reps also. And he hasn't wrestled in like 6 weeks in a real match. So you could be getting your bearings straight a little bit. And I was hoping for a better night Friday night, but on Sunday he wrestled great. He's got these double legs that once he gets his long arms on the back of your knees, it's really tough to stop him from pulling it in. He worked really hard to get bonus points and continued to try and get a tech or a pin for his teammates. He worked hard for all that, and I was happy with him Sunday. Some beautiful takedowns he had.
Yeah, in fact, on the video it showed the ankle grab where he goes to the far ankle, and it kind of goes into the near ankle, but then jumps to the far ankle. Pacino does that too, where you're just not expecting that. And it's a beautiful, beautiful takedown. And I hope he never gets caught doing it. But so far, he's surprised everyone.
It's really nice. And honestly, I think that kind of elbow shove, I think maybe I talked about this last week with you guys, but that's a Matt Lackey thing. And Matt Lackey was around me in the program. Obviously wrestled here, but when I was wrestling, was around the program as an Olympic hopeful, and he was an elbow shove kind of guy, and that kind of carried over into me to the next guy, to Isaiah Martinez. Developed it here, and that's basically like you're hitting like what would be an elbow shove, but then you transition into a double leg. So it kind of stems from trying to hit ankle pick, elbow shove. But Pettigrew hits it really nice. And I know we were going to really hit on the winners. I do want to point out, I didn't know if we were going to get to Peter Marinopoulos at all. But I think Peter's fight on Sunday, and we can kind of throw it back to and compare to with Nebraska. Peter's fight is incredible. Talk about stepping up for your teammates. Now, Peter Marinopoulos had in his mind, just I'm gonna train as hard as I can this season. I'm gonna grow and improve as much as I can, but I'm redshirting. Got Pettigrew's a very established guy right now for them. It's kind of the front runner at 97. You got Luke Luffman. You got a proven guy at heavyweight with Luffman. You know, I'm going to redshirt. I'm going to focus on getting better at wrestling, getting stronger. And Luffman goes down, and we called upon Peter Marinopoulos, and the Nebraska match, if anybody wants to watch something that is extremely exciting, that shows a lot of heart from wrestlers, watch the Peters match with Nebraska. But then same thing Sunday, Peters, and when I say him stepping up for me, for his team, Peter was 70 pounds less than the heavyweight from Nebraska. And even though Wisconsin has a smaller heavyweight, it's still 25 pounds. I mean, it's a good amount. Peter's small. Peter's smaller than a lot of 97 pounders. And the fight Peter is giving to us. I mean, Peter walked off the mat, and if you lose and you don't give effort and you don't work hard in the match, I'm gonna be pissed at you. But it's not about the loss at all. I'm gonna be pissed at you. If you didn't work hard, you didn't give a lot of effort, and Peter lost, but he left everything out there. Left it all out there and went out there to try and win for his team and his teammates. And it showed. And it was Peter kind of had the MVP in a match he lost, and a duel we lost in a way. I was really proud of that. And I think that gives us a lot of hope in the future and a lot of excitement about Peter will probably redshirt next year and get himself bigger, and what heavyweight we have in Peter Marinopoulos in the future. I'm really excited to see. I think when he gets yeah.
Another building block for you. But listen,
yeah.
You said you didn't know if we were going to touch on it. Here's the greatest part about this. This is your show. We're just all part of it, Coach. Whatever direction you want to go. And that's what the fans want to talk about, right? So there's no permission asking here. You're in the captain's chair. This ain't like last Wednesday.
I'll treat it like it's Dr. Phil. Like I got full reign, whatever I want to do. My own show.
He's talking about you, Greg, Dr. Phil, But hey, Coach, I'm going to put you on the spot a little bit, and we're not going to talk about the duels coming up, but I do have a question. So you talked about challenges. Tell the people at home, like, how challenges work, how many challenges you get in a duel, when do you lose a challenge, when do you get another challenge? Because I was under the impression if you lost the duel, you lost a challenge, do you get a second one in a duel? How does it work?
No, so the one I think you're referring to with Minnesota at 25 is they challenged, but the refs gave them the brick back because the refs said it was close enough that we want to look at it ourselves.
Okay.
And when they gave me that explanation, I just put my hands out like this and I said, "Why?" I mean, why would you hand it back to them? But that's the explanation for that one. Why it seemed like they lost and still had a challenge. In a dual meet, you get as many challenges as you want until you lose one. Okay. And then at tournaments, like the NCAA tournament, for example, you're going to have an amount of challenges based off how many qualifiers you have. So it's like if you have 7 to 10 qualifiers, you get 5 challenges throughout the tournament. If you have 5 to 7, I don't know the exact numbers right now. I'll see it on the sheet when we get there. But based off how many qualifiers you have is the amount of challenges you have throughout the tournament, challenges to lose, the amount you have to lose. So I mean, these tournaments, you have to be very strategic about it. To be extremely strategic, and it's really unfortunate if in a moment the challenge you can't risk it enough because of the rest of the team, and it breaks your heart for that guy in particular. But it's like, someone could want it, and you're like, God, man, I want to give you this challenge so bad, but there's 7 other wrestlers and we need him for, and I'm not sure if we're going to win this one. I'm not sure. So you got to be really strategic with it. And there's some guys that personally probably think maybe that they should get it or they really want it. So that's kind of the way you're basing it out. But dual meet, one challenge until you lose. Once you lose the challenge, they keep it. Tournaments usually set up by how many wrestlers you have.
Well, that's a great point because I seen it last year at the NCAA where there was wrestlers asking their coach to challenge and they were holding onto the brick with dear life, right? So that makes a ton of sense. But Greg, you want to ask coach some questions here before we cut him loose in a few minutes?
Well, Coach, what are you going to do to get ready for Purdue and Northwestern? These are two teams that you're going to beat. So how are you going to go about beating them?
Well, they have a lot of good individuals on both teams. These are going to be competitive duels. The hope is to go 2-0 on the weekend, but we're going to have to work really hard, and it's going to be tough both Friday night and on Sunday. Like the training right now at this point in the season is really geared towards the 10 guys, and we're like tomorrow we got individuals with all the guys with watching film for the weekend, training some stuff kind of specifically for what they have to do. But nothing out of the ordinary from any of the other weeks, just preparing for these two teams like we have been preparing for all the teams. I think the message that has seemed to really stick with the guys, starting from Nebraska, and this is kind of more of like maybe a mentality thing, but the last three duels from Nebraska to Minnesota to Wisconsin, I felt like our competitiveness has been really good. Guys have been wrestling with a lot of heart. We've picked up a lot of good wins. Guys have wrestled really good guys that on paper they might be outmatched, or the public thinks they're outmatched, and they've wrestled them really close. But the message has been, and you hear gratitude a lot. If you're going to listen to some of the best sports psycho people, anything self-help, some of the other better programs in the country, gratitude is always stressed. But one thing that was really great, what one of our RTC guys, Ermac Cardano, said 2 weeks ago, I said, "Hey, out in Russia," I said, "What kind of like mental stuff do they do with you guys? What are like the coach's messages?" And he said, and he kind of brought up like a little bit of the gratitude aspect, but he goes, before my match, he goes, I just think of my mom and I think of my dad, and it makes me smile and I feel better and I'm in a better mood, and I go out there and I try to win for them. Like as simple as that. So we've just like been really stressing like who are you grateful for? What kind of values do you have as a person? And really taking out your own personal values and all the people that you love and support you, going out there onto the mat with them all. The ultimate suffering is when you're only thinking about yourself, as far as like, I'm nervous, I don't know if I can do this. Am I going to lose this? Like when the negativity creeps in, it's usually very personal, and it's all about yourself. And when you start bringing your loved ones out there with you, and say, I value hard work. I value being let's say like an entertainer. That means I'm going to go attack a lot. So really bringing more people and more things out there with you to the mat has been really stressed over the past couple of weeks, and I feel like we've gotten a little spark in our ass from it. But I loved just the reinforcement from one of our regional training center athletes who's from Russia about that's the message that he heard growing up, and I just love the way our sport is so hard, but you don't have to complicate it. And he goes, this is what Ermac said. He goes, I think of my mom and I think of my dad, and it puts me in a better mood, and I go out and I try to win for them. And he goes, the other guy, he's got 2 arms, 2 legs, just like me. So then after that point, now I just try to smash him. I just kind of put it that way. It's like, all right, you're bringing your support system out there with you. You're bringing the other guy down to more of like a realistic area. He's just a human. He bleeds red. Everybody's all the same. And then I try to smash him at this point now. So it's really, it's
I
not the
must
most
break
complicated.
you.
It has a big Drago feel to it.
Yeah.
So
Well,
real
Coach,
quick, Coach,
Coach,
you're
I wanted to jump in real quick and say Northwestern was a home duel. Northwestern's now an away duel. What gives?
Well, we had to flip the home and away for future years, so now it'll change. It'll even itself out. At the end of the day, the options that Northwestern wanted, or we wanted, or the Big Ten wanted, because it was on them, I at the end of the day could just be like, these do not line up for our program and our team in the season and our training and when we're trying to peak. So unfortunately, we are not going to wrestle this duel, and we would have gotten a win. I would never think, want, or do anything that's like that. But what the option for them to come to us was the following week. And I really wanted that weekend off. I wanted 2 weekends off leading into the Big Tens. We got hit with the injury bug pretty hard in January, and I really wanted to use that time to heal up. I did not want to add another dual meet the weekend of with like the 23rd, 24th, whatever that weekend would be. I wanted that weekend off specifically. So it was like they could have came to us that weekend. That was an option. I didn't want that. Us just taking the win, I didn't want that. So us going up there, Northwestern's gonna wrestle Indiana and us on Sunday, and then home and aways in the future will be adjusted, so it's even, and nobody is it's not one-sided on who went where. It's going to be even.
You said you had a great story to share about Northwestern.
Well,
let's end with that, Coach.
So the duel was supposed to be at home this year, and like I'll bring this back a step to one of my good friends is Dan Gable's son-in-law, and I was in like I was in Tyrone Bird's backyard. Tyrone's an alumni, a friend. He coaches at Lincoln Way Central. And I was in his backyard with Danny Olsta, who is Gable's son-in-law, and with Brian Glynn was there, Eric Novak, like some other teammates of mine, like around that age. And just out of nowhere, just Dan Gable walks into the backyard. I didn't know he was coming, and I'm trying to explain to my son who was there, guys, this is as if Michael Jordan just walked in the backyard and you didn't know he was going to be there. I'm like, this is such a big deal. This is so cool. So it was right when I got the head coaching job. It was like within months of that, and I'm like, I asked Dan. I said, Dan, like the crowd you guys have at Iowa. I said, was the wrestling like what came first, chicken or egg? The product. The wrestling, was that exciting that people just word of mouth and everybody who came off that, or did people start coming first? Was it at the same time? Kind of what was it? And he said that they didn't have that big a crowd when he first got there, and they were wrestling Iowa State, and he was getting interviewed in the newspaper, and he said, I just said to the guy interviewing me, we hate Iowa State and Iowa State hates us, and then 10,000 people just showed up. So I kind of like had that in the back of my mind about like talking some crap and trying to really pump it up, like more like UFC style, to get more fans here at the State Farm Center. So a few years back, when Northwestern wrestled here in Champaign, it's not any secret where we train right now at Huff Hall. It's bad. It's bad. It's not a nice building. It's old. It's grimy. It's old. And the coach of Northwestern, Matt Storniolo, I was actually pretty good friends with him growing up. There was a connection we had through another wrestler, and we hung out a good amount. We just kind of developed a relationship. But he put on Twitter about our visiting locker room. It was like asbestos, check. Black mold, check. And it rubbed a lot of people the wrong way. And I know Matt, so I didn't take it in any bad way. I just, other people got offended by it. So we won that duel. And then Allie Heffernan, Coach Heffernan's daughter, after I know I'm bouncing around here. So the duel that Storniolo had a tweet that was a little disparaging. It was a little rough towards our locker room. He used the word asbestos. We win the duel, and Jim Heffernan's daughter Allie responds to the text and says, "Northwestern, you guys tried your hardest. You did as best as you could." And I'm like, oh man, she needs to write for Saturday Night Live. Like that was unbelievably funny. All right, now let's fast forward to right now. So they were coming to wrestle us, and I specifically wanted the duel at Huff. We had some options of which duels were going to be at the State Farm Center, which duels were going to be at Huff. And I said, I want this duel against Northwestern at Huff. And the week leading up to it, I am going to talk crap to Storniolo, to Northwestern, thinking back to what Dan Gable said about it. And so I had his old tweet locked and loaded. I had all the comments that I was going to say Thursday, Friday, leading up to the duel, and they canceled on us and aren't coming anymore. So I just have to wait an extra year to put all those tweets out. But I was just going to start talking crap based off the last time they wrestled us here, what they did. Now thinking, all right, this is how Dan Gable said he got the crowd. You just got to kind of talk the SHIT and get the fans into it. So I had it all loaded up.
Well, I know I had to go with Mike Tamalo. He was a Northwestern wrestler on social media about that very issue. And what I ended up doing was sending to him a clip of Rocky IV, which shows, the Russian doing the getting the shots and doing the scientific weight training, and then Rocky out in the country lifting rocks and chopping wood. And so that was my response.
Well, I think it has like a Rocky III feel also of when Mr. T. I love this story, like comparing like where we train here at Huff when Mr. T is calling out Rocky and Rocky and Mickey doesn't want to train Rocky for the fight. And Rocky asks Mickey why, and Mickey says, because the worst thing that can happen to a fighter is he gets civilized. It's because Rocky now had the money and all that stuff. And I think there's a Mike. I think it's a Mike Tyson quote of where it's like it's hard to get up and train when you're waking up in silk sheets. Yeah. You kind of need that grunginess and wrestling people. We have that grittiness. The way Mr. T was training, the way Rocky trained in Russia.
Well, Coach, you're a great lead man because tomorrow night on the 3-2 podcast, we're having Coach Medlin on. So, he'll have some Air Max stories. He'll have some Russia stories. We're going to talk about his travels. But, Coach, thanks for the first Coach's Corner. It's been fantastic. We're going to hold you to it, and we're going to hold you to that next year on Northwestern, too, because we'll post the tweets for you. By then, we're going to have thousands of followers, so we're going to make it easy for you.
Well, if anybody has any clever ideas that I could put out there on Twitter or Instagram, let me know.
Yes,
we'll be thinking.
Awesome, Coach. You have a great evening. Thank you.
You guys too. Thank you.
Take care, Coach.
More and more people have been staying extra. It's almost been like Forrest Gump going for his run. It's just more and more every single day. And practice ended probably at 5:30, and we had 15 guys up there on their own until 10 minutes ago.